Welcome to Scholar's T10 program. In this program, we'll be covering top 10 current affairs articles at 10 o'clock. These articles are covered from various sources like The Hindu, Indian Express, PIB, LiveMint, etc. This program will be covered in two segments. That is, in first segment, we will be covering daily news articles which are important for both prelims and mains. In second segment, we will be covering articles that are specifically important for prelims in MCQs format. Log on to Skholar.in or download Skholar Android app for daily news, current affairs, quiz, test series, notes, videos, and everything related to UPSC civil service exam preparation. Let's start our today's program with first article on financing the higher education in India. India's gross enrollment ratio in higher education is just 28%. This is less than the global average of 38%. In order to become a knowledge economy, higher education institutions should boost the innovation ecosystem and also increase the gross enrollment ratio to 50%. But to increase the gross enrollment ratio and also to boost the innovation ecosystem, there is need to scale up the existing institutions and creating premier ones. Premier ones in the sense like IITs or IISCs. But to do this, there is an additional budgetary allocation is required from the government. But if you see in India, as a percentage of GDP, the expenditure on higher education is very low. And this has also connections with the global ranking of higher education institutions of India. Let's analyze some few financial models through which higher education institution can get their funding. One is we can try with the Australia's higher education loan program. In this, what happens is all the students, irrespective of their parents' financial background, all the students are provided with interest-free and collateral-free loans. And these loans are recovered from their students when they get the job, when they are employed and when they start earning money. This can also be implemented in India. And income can also be generated by investing in research and monetizing that research. For example, the IIT Delhi startups have developed a most affordable COVID-19 testing kit, and also they are also supplying the export quality personal protective equipments. And such new innovation thing demonstrate that there are lots of potentials by investing in higher education institutes that can generate. Endowment donations can also be used to generate the new source of funding for the higher education institutions. Let's move on to another article. It's about food grain management. The excess of food grains in the godowns is a new challenge now. During the lockdown, the government has procured huge amount of food grains, and those food grains are lying in the godowns and they are spoiling because of the heavy rains and various other issues. On the other hand, the farmers are also apprehensive that government may abdicate its responsibility of buying grains at the MSP. So let's understand how to tackle these issues. This Shantakumar committee has recommended few recommendations to handle the food storage in India. It recommended that handing over of the food procurement operation by the Food Corporation of India to the state governments. It also suggested that stocks be paid down to the buffer stock norms in three ways. In India, what happens is the food grains are stocked more than the buffer norm that is required. And the excess stock should be released in the three ways. One is releasing under the open market scale scheme, where food grains are sold in the open market. Okay, and exports of the food grains, and also giving it away as a food aid to conflict ravaged countries to earn international goodwill. Instead of lying in the godowns and rotting that food grains, it can be given away as a food aid, which will also earn an international goodwill for India. There is also another, that is United States model, through which food grain can also be stored and the incomes of farmers can also be increased. In US, what happens is the federal government, which is similar to central government in India, announces the support prices, but the farmers are encouraged to store the food grains in silos at the harvest. Silos are similar to godowns, but they are more scientifically designed to store the food grains in very safe and very hygiene manner. And the farmers are provided with non-recourse loan by the commodity credit corporation that equals the quantity stored and multiplied by the support price. For example, if a farmer is having 100 kilos of food grain and the value of the food grain is some $1,000, the $1,000 amount of loan is given to that farmers. Suppose in future the market price is higher than the support price, the farmer sells the grains in the market and repay the loan and keep the profit. If the market price is less than the announced price, then the farmer can default on the loan, and the grain is surrendered to the commodity credit corporation. By this, what happens is farmer is secured that he will either get the minimum support price or he will sell at the higher price than the MSP. But to implement this mechanism in India, there should be increasing warehousing infrastructure, which is reducing in India, and this can reduce the procurement by the state governments also, states or the government also in India. Now let's move on to another article. It's about India, China and Myanmar. This article is important for both GS paper to international relations and GS paper to internal security. Chinese policies are designed to use Myanmar to promote separatist violence in India's northeastern state. Every army insurgent group in northeastern states has linked with armed insurgent group in northwest Myanmar. The Myanmar-China border has also become the epicenter of local armed separatist groups operating in Myanmar and Indian groups, ranging from Ulfa in Assam to the NSCS in Nagaland. These separatist groups are armed, trained and even financed in the Yunnan province of China before crossing back to India. So this is all happening because Myanmar is dependent on China. Now let's understand why Myanmar is dependent on China. After the sanctions by the United States and European allies, especially after the Rohingya refugee crisis, Myanmar has become heavily dependent on China for trade and economic purposes. And China uses the armed group as the leverage to interfere and to influence the Myanmar's internal affairs also. China even has an ambassador to connect with the armed group operating along and across the China-Myanmar border. China's influences this armed group that participating in conference for drafting the new constitution for the country, that is for the Myanmar. Now, there are some India's project in Myanmar which are affected because of the armed group coalition happening in the Myanmar and China. India's ONGC is engaged in the offshore oil exploration project along Myanmar's Bay of Bengal coast. Sitwe Post in the Bay of Bengal is built principally for transportation of goods from Mizoram and other northeastern states across Bay of Bengal to Kolkata. On the other hand, the Kwakpu port being developed by China is also located not far from the Sitwe port that is being developed by India. There is also concern in Myanmar that about facing the debt trap situation similar to Sri Lanka. What happened with Sri Lanka with China's debt trap situation. On the other hand, the India-Myanmar Friendship Road is also important project, and all these projects are affected because of the Chinese influence in the region. Now next move on to another article. It's about novel borrowing plan. The central government has come up with a novel borrowing plan to compensate for the GST shortfall. Recently, what happened is due to GST shortfall, the central government is unable to give the GST fund that is required to give to the state governments. So because of here in this novel borrowing plan, what happens is multilateral agencies like World Bank and other AIIB and New Development Bank lend for a project in states or union territory, and center gives the sovereign guarantee to those fundings. This makes funding available at much lower rate and single rate, as the center borrows for many schemes across various states and union territories. So why states cannot borrow directly from these agencies? Why center has to be in between? Because The funding agency might not be comfortable dealing with individual states or union territories if each state or UT borrow independently. The cost of funding will also vary from state to state depending on the strength and weaknesses. When a center borrows on to lend to the states or union territories, the fiscal deficit of the center will also not be impacted. If a state individually went to borrow in the market, the interest rate could be higher. It could be about 30 to 40 points or even higher than the what center borrows. That's why states are borrowing through the central government. Okay, and let's move on to another article. It's about reservations. Every year, at least one important news discussions comes about reservations, which are important for the exams. Recently, the Supreme Court has observed that in a federal setup, the state governments cannot be denied the power to make laws giving preferential treatment to the subcategories within the reservation, especially of scheduled caste. It means now the states can make subcategories within the category. For example, there is a scheduled caste. Within that, again, the state governments can make subcategories also for the giving them for reservation purpose or for any other purpose. The Constitution of India sanctions that protective discrimination and affirmative action in favor of the lower caste and some religious communities is allowed. However, the original constitution gave the power to president to notify the list, that is who are included in the scheduled caste or who are not included. The power to notify is given to president. Later, the mechanism has been evolved to involve the state governments in this process also. Earlier, in CV Chennaiya versus Andhra Pradesh case, dealing with the subcategorization of the scheduled caste, the Supreme Court ruled that state governments had no power in creating subcategories. But now, the Supreme Court has ruled that state government has power to create subcategories within the reservations. There is also issue of intercaste marriages with related to reservations. Intercaste marriages have been legalized in India through Arya Marriage Validation Act, the Hindu Marriage Disabilities Act, and the Hindu Marriage Act. Intercaste marriage gave rise to problems connected with the reservations for scheduled caste because of various judicial pronouncements. And intercaste marriage that is already a taboo gets complicated because of the reservations. Reservations that were supposed to be a temporary measure in India till the attainment of egalitarian state, now it has become a permanent fixture. So the state should strive to make the society egalitarian, and the reservation should be made meaningless in the future. This is the way forward. Let's move on to our next segment. It's about MCQs. Shashi Shekhar Vempati Committee, sometimes seen in news, is related to A. Banking sector reforms, B. COVID vaccine distribution, C. Television rating agency, D. Privatization of Air India. And the answer is C. Television rating agencies. Recently, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has constituted a committee to review the guidelines on television rating agencies in India. That is TRP this one, ratings. Prasar Bharati CEO Shashi Shekhar Vempati will be the chairman of the committee. The committee will carry out an appraisal of existing system, examine, try recommendation, overall industry scenario, and address the needs of the stakeholders and make recommendation for robust, transparent, and accountable rating system through changes, if any, in the existing guidelines. Let's move on to the next question. Consider the following statements regarding Earth observation satellite to be launched by ISRO. It will be launched by PSLV C49. It has applications in the disaster management. Which of the above statements is or are correct? A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. both 1 and 2, D. neither 1 nor 2. And the answer is C. both only. D. The Indian Space Research Organization ISRO has scheduled the launch of Earth Observatory Satellite, that is EOS-01. The EOS-01 is intended for applications in agriculture, forestry, and disaster management support. Along with this satellite, 9 other customer satellites will also be carried into space by workhorse launch PSLV C-49. These 9 other satellites are satellites of Lithuania, Luxembourg, and the USA. The customer satellites are launched under the commercial agreement with New Space India Limited under the Department of Space. Next, move on to our third quiz. Consider the following statement regarding the US withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. Once a country withdraws from the Paris Agreement, it cannot rejoin. A country can leave the agreement only after a period of 3 years from the date of ratification. Which of the above statements is or are correct? A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. both 1 and 2, D. neither 1 nor 2. And the answer is B. 2 only. Statement 2 is correct because though the US has announced the exit from the Paris Agreement in 2017, no country could give a notice to leave the agreement until 3 years had been passed from the date of ratification. As 3 years has been passed now, US has declared formal withdrawal from the agreement. However, the another candidate, Joe Biden, tells that if he gets elected, he will again rejoin the Paris Agreement. The agreement aims to keep the global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels to pursue the efforts to limit the temperature increase even further 1.5 degrees Celsius. And statement 1 is incorrect because if the US could again rejoin the agreement in the future. Let's move on to our fourth quiz. Consider the following statement regarding International Election Visitors Program. This program would provide an overview of Indian electoral process. It is organized by the Election Commission of India. Which of the above statements is or are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, D. neither 1 nor 2. And the answer is C. both 1 and 2. The Election Commission of India is organizing an international virtual election visitors program 2020 for the foreign election management bodies or organizations for Bihar elections. In this organization, delegates from over 40 countries across the world and 3 international organizations have been invited. Those 3 international organizations are International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, International Foundation for Electoral Systems, and Association of World Election Bodies. Such election visiting program has been conducted by Election Commission of India earlier also in 2014 general election and also in several state assembly elections also. Now in this year for the Bihar assembly election, the Election Commission is again organizing this international virtual election visitor program. The program would provide to the participants an overview of the large canvas of Indian electoral process, the new initiative taken by ECI on voter facilitation, transparency and accessibility of electoral system, and the ECI's response to the changing needs of training and capacity building in Indian election system. Let's move on to last quiz of the day. The Indian Development Update is released by A. Niti Aayog, B. Ministry of Commerce and Industry, C. Ministry of Finance, D. World Bank. And the answer is D. World Bank. The Indian Development Update is a biannual flagship publication of the World Bank that takes stocks of the Indian economy. The World Bank projected in this report are the Indian economy would be contract by 3.2% in financial year 2020 and rebound slowly from the financial year 2021. That's it, friends. Thank you for watching today's program. Stay tuned to Skholar's YouTube channel for regular updates and further new classes. Good night, friends.